Well, hello and welcome to Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. It's great to see you again. I do hope that you are doing well. We are starting a new unit today on the EDUCAS exams board. However, obviously a lot of these themes will fit other exam boards as well. We're going to be thinking about a unit called Sin and Forgiveness, which is our last unit if you're currently at my school. So we've got some big questions behind me today that I want you to think about. And just have a look at those now and see which of those you already know. As usual, do pause me as we go and make any notes that you need to. Have a look at these questions. See if there's any of these that you already have an opinion on, because these are all questions we're going to look at during today's unit. Okay, so in today's lesson, we're going to be looking at an introduction to what is good and evil to some extent, but we're going to focus particularly on crime. So, is this a crime? There's two crimes here, but are they crimes in your opinion, and how do you think they should be punished as well? So, a woman's living by herself with 3 children. She spent all of her benefit money and will get no more money for 2 more days. She goes into a shop and she steals some food for tea. Is that bad? Is that a crime? What sort of punishment does it deserve if it is? Or is it not a crime at all? Second question, a man runs out from the pub. He's drunk and he runs straight in front of a car and gets run over. He breaks his legs and he wants to sue the driver of the car for just not being very careful. Do you think that that's a crime? I'd like you to think about those. Maybe make a few notes. Go and grab your pen and paper because here's our cheesy intro music. Okay, so our title today is Why Do People Get Punished? Why do people get punished? And our learning objective is to explore what Christians believe about punishment. As usual, do get the titles written down as we go. It's going to be good if we can define what punishment is and give an example. It's going to be great if we can describe the aims of punishment, giving the positives and negatives of each aim, and it's going to be even better if we can relate those ideas to Christianity. So we're going to think about a Christian value of justice today and maybe a little bit creative. During today's session, we're going to rank some information, we're going to define some terms, apply to situations, and then look at a D-style Farmy question. So to start off with then, we need to understand what a crime is. Now Google says a crime is an act or omission which constitutes an offence and is punishable by law. So with that in mind, these are all crimes. I would like you to rank them in your book in order. Which do you think is the worst? That goes at the top. And which crime do you think is the most acceptable? That goes at the bottom. So pause me now and get those written down in order from the worst at the top to the one that's less bad at the bottom. And if you want to explain why you've chosen them in the order you have, you can do so. And if you want to as well, you can also say how you might punish those people. So have a go at that and then come back to me when you're done. This is going to take you 5 minutes or so. Okay, so the next thing then that we're going to think about is the reasons for punishment. Because let's be honest, if I punish my children for doing something, it's not because I just want to punish them, it's because I want them to change their attitude for next time. So there's 6 different reasons why people might get punished. Okay, these are there behind me. So what I'd like you to do is to make a note of each of those in your book. You can put them in your own words or shrink them down. And we're going to need to think about what's good and bad about each one as well. So what I need you to do is when you're doing that, to write down a positive and a negative for each of these. So let's go through these together. So a just and fair society, that's a reason for punishment. And that's to make sure that everyone is treated fairly and equally. Now, that's obviously a positive, is that you have a society where everyone is living in a good environment, where there is law and order. But a negative might be that how can you treat some people more equally than others? In a case of euthanasia, which you've looked at already, prosecuting a family for helping a loved one die, which is how the law currently stands, you might argue isn't a very good thing to do. And it's not very fair either. So who decides what is fair and equal in these sorts of situations? Deterrence then. Deterrence is to deter someone from committing a crime, or deter somebody else from committing a crime. So, for example, in some countries you steal, you have your hands chopped off if you're caught. If you see a one-handed person you're tempted to steal, you're not likely to steal because you'll be thinking, I don't want that to happen to me. That's what deterrence is. So a positive is a really good strategy. The death penalty is an example of this in the USA. But a negative, you're severely punishing someone for a crime that actually maybe the punishment doesn't balance out to that positive. Rehabilitation then. This is, or reform as it's also known. This is to change the offender so they don't do it again. So the idea is that you have someone who burgles a house and they go to prison. Positive for that is while they're in prison, they're put on a drug rehab program. When they're released from prison, they therefore don't need to steal anymore because they're not dependent on drugs. A negative is that it can be seen as a bit of a cop-out, a bit of an easy solution, because the person isn't actually doing anything other than seeking assistance and help, which they could have done without committing a crime in the first place. Then you've got revenge and retribution. Okay, this is the absolute classic. This is the one that says that you can you get your own back on the person just because that's what you feel you need to do. Then the final two is protection, which is where you protect the society. So you lock someone up. So in a case of rape, for example, you lock them up and therefore they can't do that crime anymore because they're in prison. A negative for that is you might have to lock people up for most of their lives. And you might say that's not very fair because there's no hope for reform or rehabilitation at the end of that. And lastly, there's reparation, which is you make things right with the criminal. So someone breaks into my house and steals my TV, I get the money back for that because that's only fair, and therefore I can get my own TV back. So that's the concept. What I'd like you to have done is make a note of all 6 of those with the positive and negatives of each of them. Okay, so with that done, let's move on to recapping our objectives. So we said it'd be good if we could define what punishment is. Well, we know what crime is, and if you know what punishment is, you can hopefully come up with some examples and the idea that you're getting your own back. Describe the aims of punishment, those 6 that we've just looked at, giving positives and negatives of each of them, and we now need to relate those ideas to Christianity. Before we do that, however, let's just do a quick recap exercise. Which of these matches which of these? See if you can just work those out now. Pause me and then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully then you've got protection, which is to make sure society is safe. That's E. Deterrence, which is to put people off from committing the crime. That's F. Rehabilitation, which is also known as reform. So that's B. You've got revenge, which is D. You've got reparation, which is E. And then you've got just society, which is A. So hopefully you've got those down. We're now going to turn our attention to our tall item quotes. I've used these before, and I would suggest that you learn these. These are all in the Bible, so you can say in your exams the Bible teaches that and choose one of these. And I'd like you to think about which of these tall items would be used for retribution and rehabilitation, and why do they work? So have a look at those now. Write 2 of them out that you think would work for retribution or rehabilitation and explain why you've chosen those, and then come back to me. Okay, so there's quite a few options you could go for. For retribution, you'd have an eye for an eye. That's kind of the classic approach, that if someone does something to you, you get your own back. Okay, so that's sort of your go-to for a question on crime and punishment. And then you need the opposite viewpoint. So you've got, for rehabilitation, you've got turn the other cheek, give someone a second chance. You've got 7 times 70 you should forgive. You might even go down treat others as you would like to be treated. So all of those would work. Just make sure that you're really clear on that. So how would you punish these crimes? What you're going to do is you're going to have a look at these now, and you're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so going through them. You need to choose maybe 2 or 3 of them and explain how would this be punished from a protection, deterrent and rehabilitation viewpoint. You must explain. So you've got to look at those 3. So if it's protection, it's overkill. If it's protection, you're going to go over the top at punishing that person. If it's deterrent, you're going to probably lock them up. So I've got that the wrong way around. Protection, it's you're going to be locking them up for life potentially or doing something. Deterrent is overkill, and then rehabilitation or reform is giving them a chance to change. So have a look at those now. Choose 2 or 3 of them and spend the next 15 minutes breaking it down on how those things would be punished, and then come back to me. Okay, so we're going to move on to our exam question now. Before we do that, though, I'd like you to set yourself a target based on feedback your teachers have already given you. So I've got some suggestions here that I kind of come across all the time. You can choose one of those, or you can choose one yourself. And before you write the exam question, set yourself a target to see if you can put it in the exam answer you're going to give. Because obviously, if you can do it, then that saves you setting yourself a target afterwards. So set yourself a target now. Write that in your book, and then come back to me and I'll go through the question with you. Okay, so hopefully we've got a question down. So this then is the question. Punishment should try to change people. Okay, it's a discussion question, it's a D question. Discuss this statement showing you've considered more than one point of view. Remember, there's no straight way to answer this, but you could use FAMI, for, against, rebuttal, my opinion, and if everyone. I've gone through what those mean previously, but a rebuttal is basically a third point of view. You need to try and use point, evidence, explanation, change if you can, and we talked about that previously, and you've got your tool items there you can use as well. So 15 minutes to get an answer to this question written, and then come back to me and we'll go through how that will be marked. Brilliant. So just before we finish off then, let's recap our objectives for the day. We said we'll explore what Christians believe about punishment, and we said it'd be good if you could define what punishment was and give examples. We've done that a lot. Great if you could describe the aims of punishment and the positive and negative of those. We've done those. And even better if you can relate those ideas of punishment to Christianity, which we've obviously covered quite a lot as well. So how this is going to get marked then, again with your purple pens or feedback colours that you might have. For 0, you've not answered the question, or you've written something about entirely something totally different, which I'm sure you haven't got. For 1 mark, you have written a very short response, maybe not used any religious terms in it. For a 2 mark, it's a limited statement of maybe more than one point of view. You may have used a religious term, maybe not even a quote in there. You might have just done a for or an against and not really reached a conclusion. For a 7 to 9 mark, it's good. You've done a for and against and reached a conclusion. You maybe have some quotes in there which are explained and linked back, and you will definitely have used some religious terminology. For a 10 to 12 mark, it's very good. You've done a for, against, maybe even a rebuttal, a third point of view. You've used religion throughout. You maybe said Roman Catholics, Church of England. You may have thought about some of the differences that come through with some of those denominations. And then we've talked about religious terms as well within that. And that's what you're looking for that. And for a higher grade, it's a full page and a half of detailed information that go through maybe different forms of punishment and different aims and stuff like that. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much for your time for your day. Thanks. I'll try that again. Thanks very much today for your time. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Wash your hands. God bless you. And I'll see you soon.